Imagine for a second that you're living a life without being able to choose. All decisions in your life are made by someone else. So, for example, the time you wake up in the morning. Well, maybe some of us already live like that. Let's think of something else. The clothes you wear, what you eat, what time you eat. Imagine if someone else was choosing your career, where you work, what do you do in your free time, what time you arrive or leave an event. What does that sound like to you? How does it make you feel? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. It feels amazing, no responsibilities. But really, think what it would be like to live a life without being able to control. Well, welcome to the life of a child. Yeah, that's it. And guess who are the ones trying to control the lives of youth and children? You guessed it, it's us, adults. But why do we do it? Well, some people may say it's to protect them or to educate them. But how much of that are we really doing if we're taking away their autonomy and ability to choose? Maybe the reason why we do it is to fulfill our need to control our environment, to get that sense of predictability that leads to the security and fulfills our need for psychological safety. But guess what? Youth have the same need for familiarity, security, and autonomy. And if they don't have it, maybe they'll act up. As adults, we are all leaders in some capacity to youth somewhere. Maybe we're parents, teachers, counselors, an older sibling, or maybe there's a child in a family or in the community who looks up to you. But being a leader doesn't mean we're good leaders, and raises the question, what does it mean to be a good leader to youth? Some will say it's to tell them what to do. Well, that is the open example, and parents really like that one. Others will say it's to be a good role model, set a good example, do the right thing, and hope they will follow. It's not enough. One of the most powerful tools to engaging with youth is often overlooked by adults. Just ask questions. Sincerely consider the answer. Have a dialogue. By doing that, we'll be giving voice to youth. And that comes from the notion that our experiences in our lives can be determined by our own choices. That's called humanism. And it opposes the notion that our lives are controlled by environmental factors or biological influences that we cannot control. Instead, humanism places the human in the center of their lived experiences. It highlights how we can influence our lives and our experiences as long as we have the freedom and the autonomy to choose. These principles of humanism have been applied to many professional domains, including psychology, nursing, even business. But one domain that is notorious for its application is in education. Humanistic education, or a student-centered approach, it opposes a traditional teacher-centered approach where the teacher is considered the decision maker in the classroom, the proprietor of knowledge that will gift information to passive, obedient students who sit quietly at their desk while they absorb, retain, and recall what they learn. No. Instead, teachers became aware of the importance of including students as agents of their learning experience and implemented practices that actively engage students in building their knowledge. So the teacher becomes a guide, a facilitator. To do that, they need to build positive relationships that are based on trust, and they become sensitive to the individual needs of each student. And by doing that, it allows them to teach by, for example, proposing a problem and giving the students the freedom to find the solutions on their own, with some guidance, of course. Teachers can also propose a topic or a theme for students to investigate, to research. Or they can offer real-life cases for students to examine and apply concepts. This last one is very popular in medical schools and in business schools around the world. In some, teachers are asking questions, sincerely considering answers, having discussions, and giving voice. There's a substantial body of literature that supports these pedagogical strategies, showing that youth become more motivated and engaged in school. They learn factual, conceptual, and theoretical knowledge. They learn to process information better, and they learn to think critically and problem solve. So in some, youth like school better, they learn more, they learn better, and they learn the skills that are going to allow them to be successful in life. These principles have also been applied in other contexts, like sport, for example, in particular in the way that coaches coach youth athletes. And this is particularly interesting and relevant because sport is such a traditionally autocratic, coach-centered environment, right? The coach controls the team. The role of the coach is thought to be that of the decision maker. The coach decides what skills athletes need to learn, how they're going to learn it, what plays or strategies are going to be used in a game, who will play and who will sit on the bench, when to call a timeout. So in this context, humanistic coaching offers a paradigm shift, a change of attitude, where coaches go from the decision makers to sharing responsibility. They go from setting standards and setting rules to agreeing on them. They become facilitators of a learning process. Interestingly, research on serial-winning coaches, and these are coaches who won multiple championships at a national or international level, show that the best coaches in the world have been using these principles for decades. And recently, youth sport coaches started using them as well. So instead of telling athletes what to do, coaches ask thought-provoking questions that entice athletes to think critically about their sport and problem solve. They build collaborative relationships and ask for feedback on practices and game strategies. And they take these suggestions and implement into their practices. And by doing so, they're including the athletes in decision-making about the team. In some, they are asking questions, sincerely considering answers, having conversations, and giving voice. And research supports that these strategies foster positive youth development through sport. Athletes of these coaches like their coaches better. They build stronger, positive, and more long-lasting relationships with them. They like the sport better. They feel they learn and are able to critically think about their sport. And they feel more confident overcoming challenges, not just in sport, but in life. So, what can we learn from these sport coaches and teachers? Well, we can learn that in order to engage with youth, we need to build positive, collaborative relationships that are based on trust. We need to seek input and include them in decisions about their lives. And by doing so, we can expect to have youth that are more engaged and motivated, more autonomous and independent, and can think critically and problem solve. You see, changing orders to questions creates a fundamental shift in the relationship between adults and youth. And by asking questions, we're encouraging youth to reflect about their decisions and their lives. And by doing so, we are truly educating them to make better decisions, which will ultimately lead them to living better lives. So in sum, to be a better leader to youth, we need to ask questions, sincerely consider the answers, have a conversation, and give voice. And when we hear youth, as adults, we can learn something too. I'll give you an example of a thought-provoking question that my 6-year-old asked me not too long ago. The backstory is we were at a party at a friend's place, and my very curious son wanted to explore the house. And the host did not want him to enter one room, so he lied to my son to control him, convince him. He said there were monsters in there. My son at first questioned that, but eventually he let go and he did not enter the room. And later that night, on the drive home, he brought up the topic again. So I must add, I was quite proud of him, of his critical thinking and questioning the existence of monsters. But our conversation led to the reflection on lies. And why is it that adults lie to children? And my son, with a very upset tone, said, "Dad, don't adults remember when they were children?" I haven't been able to answer that question yet, but it certainly led me to a lot of self-reflection on how I behave and engage with my son. You see, all of us want to be heard, and youth are no different. By giving voice to youth, we can shed light into the way that they see the world, and we can guide them through their decision-making process. By doing so, we are empowering them with the tools to illuminate their own path. Ultimately, to give voice to youth is to truly illuminate their lives. Thank you.